Over this season, we were in conversation with interdisciplinary thinkers at the intersection of art, science, technology, society, and everything in between. In 6 guest interviews, we uncovered the lives of people who refuse to pick a lane and to build something new where multiple worlds meet. Today we're closing season 2, and I'm back with Brune, who joined me at the very start of this journey in our prelude episode. We're returning to reflect on what surprised us, what stuck with us, and what this season taught us about art, about science, and about the spaces where they meet. We hope this brief discussion gives you the space to recognize your own discoveries throughout the episodes and positions you with the practical tools for your own journey. Really great to have you back for this finale episode. We've gone through a serious journey. It's been a long time that we've been working on this, and I'm so happy that we've actually gotten to this point in the end where we have conversations, we have people who have shared their stories, and we're actually able to pull something from what they said into something else that's meaningful. So it's great to have you back.
Super happy to talk with you. I feel like it's awesome. I loved this idea that you had to do the prelude and the finale. And it's always great to reflect on something. And already just us talking, I feel like I've actually gotten a lot out of being able to reflect on all of these together. I think it's something that I maybe wouldn't have done alone. Like I got a lot from each episode alone, but now, yeah, like whoa, I actually did get a ton from this. And it was an awesome journey. I actually loved Michelle's conversation with you because on multiple occasions she said, "I am by no means an expert. I'm bringing it kind of with open palms and being like, here, let's all observe this together, wherever you're coming from, whatever background you have. Let's come and open the doors and discuss this." People did sometimes come in and they're like, "You don't know anything about this," but it's like, "No, no, like I'm just here to open the conversation." And I feel like that's a really cool thing with art science too. You don't have to belong to a certain group. It's yeah, again, it's very openness, and I liked that Michelle was reminding us of that.
Yeah, and what I'm noticing too is that even with each person who is specialized in a particular field, is that they're able to hop over to other science-based fields. Todd started in the psychology of art science integration, but he ended up in nanotechnology, fractals, physics, neuroscience, but with extreme knowledge in a lot of these things. And he's able to move between these things and produce works and impact people on a very large scale, not because he started with psychology, but because he was able to go across fields differently. Like same thing with Francesco. He started in chemistry and now he's in tech and environmental sciences. Like there's so many things that he's touching on from chemistry. Like how did you get there?
I think this touches on something we were mentioning earlier, that something I got out of all of these interviews is the fact that it's very fun and inspiring to talk about art science as something kind of broad and very beautiful in a way, but I think from these interviews, I really realized how much work people have put in to become the art scientists they are, and it takes a lot of study, and it does actually take specialization of some form, whether that's in an art or in a science. All of these people have gained a particular skill and then use that then as the backbone for reaching out to different disciplines or communities. You can only create a bridge if you have kind of a starting base, and I thought that was a great reminder. The fact that you are starting your PhD soon, I feel like is super important context and like how that has impacted you.
I think after listening to everyone and editing every conversation and being a part of the process, definitely I've been able to reshape how I see my PhD coming up in the fall. There's a lot that I wasn't thinking about before. That it was the idea was generally there, but now from actually hearing the experiences and how people are navigating art science, it's just a little bit more clear as to how art science can work. And I think that really came across, particularly in Philippe's episode, because of the way, like you said, he talks about specialization and actually having to study, but then also allowing yourself to study the humanities of the sciences to get to the arts. I found that was an interesting pathway to have because I've never really considered how the humanities play a role in art science. I knew it was there and I was kind of avoiding it. Like, what does this even mean? I'm not in humanities, but it really does have everything has a role in this. And I think his idea of using the knowledge of history and how things came about, society, sociology, psychology, and placing that context on science gives you a natural entry point into how you can
Mhm.
interact with the art science in the real world. So that to me, I feel like every person contributed so much to the way I think about things, but that in particular, it's like a very clear connection between how many things that were spoken about can actually connect. The community, science, the art, the process, the collaboration, like it really comes down to how much you're able to navigate between these different fields in a very open way without creating rigid categories between each of them and trying to put them together. Can you share where you feel like this has impacted you on your journey?
Yeah, so I guess since the kind of beginning of this series and where we are now, I found it interesting that I thought that I would be more changed by all the conversations. I happened to be on vacation, kind of traveling around and also reflecting on my own semester and also the upcoming future semesters. I found that I wasn't necessarily inspired in a new way, but I was actually able to kind of consolidate all the thoughts that I'd had. Well, actually, and it was cool because I wasn't the one consolidating it. It was just it felt really good to hear people say things that were so well articulated about how I felt about art science. And I think I happened to be traveling quite a bit with my family as the first few episodes were coming out, and it felt so good to, instead of having to explain part of myself, which I had actually never really properly showed to them, to just have them listen to both our prelude episode and also, like, all the beginning episodes, to have them experience the art science from people who have done it themselves. It was like, I don't know, I sometimes even had tears in my eyes when I was watching them, like, nod along to episodes and be like, "Yeah, this makes a lot of sense." It was so cool to not have to, not that I had never tried to explain it to them, but just to have the conversation starter. I think that was maybe one of the coolest things. And I was actually surprised when you sent me the first final podcast and it was only 30 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, what? Where did the other, like, an hour of recording go?"
Yeah.
Then I actually think that 30 minutes is such a wonderful length because it's sometimes a lot of content to kind of absorb, but 30 minutes is such an accessible length, and I feel like being able to share that with other people and be like, "Hey, listen to this podcast, it's only 30 minutes, like, you'll get a lot out of it." I think that that was maybe the coolest outcome, was to be able to open up that part of myself with the people around me, but also be able to put more words to it. Like, I think from every single episode, I gained new vocabulary, I gained a new perspective on art science. Like, it didn't fundamentally change the way that I view any of it, but it was just, yeah, it was so cool to, like, gain these new words. I feel like I definitely feel like I'm much more part of a community. Given where I am now, where I'm kind of doubting where I am, I think I can confidently say that I'm no longer doubting where I'm going. And it's not only because of these episodes, obviously, like, I've had reflections on my own, but it's awesome to have heard more about everyone's background and how they got to where they are. It seems easy when people are in it to be like, "Oh, they just happened to be here and, like, it worked out," you know? And, like, no, it did not just work out. Like, people put in work and they met the right people, and sometimes it was really difficult. Now they're doing something crazy, and, like, that was really cool to hear.
I completely relate to that, nodding along and feeling heard by people you care about because I got to visit my grandparents for a week. Every time I visit in Toronto, my grandpa is like, what are you up to? What are you doing? And so this time I got to explain the podcast and the different careers that came out of it and what people are doing. And if every single person, it was like a gasp. Like for him, like this is a different generation, right? So it's like, what are you even talking about? Like it's not real. Like that's not something that he's heard before. And so just to see him make the connection points and understand, wow, this could be something really, really important. It makes it easier to speak about what we're doing to other people because it's like proof. It's credibility. It's these people have been doing it for years. Like you said, they haven't figured it all out, but they somehow made it to this point and are super impactful. Interdisciplinary ideas are exciting to imagine, but surprisingly hard to build. Not because the idea isn't good, but because without a clear structure, even the most compelling concepts can delay. The Art Science in Motion framework is a digital workbook with that structure. 5 guided modules will take you from a scattered idea to a defined, testable proof of concept. Our easy to follow worksheets will help you name what you're doing, understand why it matters, and give you a roadmap for all that comes next. Download your copy at creart.ca/store.
One of the coolest thing I feel like I got out of the series as a whole is this realization that every single person that was interviewed was super different. I feel like I didn't realize how different they all were until I heard all of the episodes and read all the transcripts. And I think despite all the differences, there is a clear unity and connection between all of them, and it is indeed this art science. Just it's so clear that that is a common thread. And I thought it was really cool that despite everyone's different art, different science, different kind of community, culture, etc., I found that for me, the kind of common nodes between everyone was that I found that all of these people had a very doer mentality. They had the energy, the passion, the desire, this like really strong drive to move in a certain direction, whether it was a novel direction like Todd, or whether it was just this desire to put two things together that hadn't been done before. And I think I was also kind of enamored by the fact that there is a lot of work that's put in, again, this notion that there is a moment to specialize in a certain art or a certain science, but that it's also insanely community based. Nobody that we talked to was in their hole alone doing it alone. Like there's always an inspiration or some form of mentorship, whether it's colleagues or like other people that are following this art science route. So I thought it was awesome that it's like people that are very driven and have an idea and are working towards it really diligently, but they're not alone. Like there is this community aspect. And I was also comforted by the fact that there is a lot of random luck that you happen to meet the right people for me in this stage of life where I feel like my life is about to begin in a way. My biggest takeaway for myself is if I have a desire, dream, goal, whatever, and I move towards that with kind of an open heart and open mind, willing to put things together and meet people of different disciplines, that with the combination of right people, at some point things will fall into place. Work needs to be put in, but also you need to have a bit of faith and hope that things will be okay and that the changes in life, whether they're good or bad, will end up leading you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I think community is one of the bigger things that I took away. Not just community, but the relationship of art science to society and the role of other people's thoughts and experiences in the work that we produce, but also in how we collaborate and bring things together. Art science could obviously not be done in isolation. And even as we're speaking right now, the episodes allowed people in our family or our close networks to understand what art science is. Like we can't do that alone. By just one person shouting it from a rooftop is not going to help. So by having so many people share their experiences, but also share how they're connecting into community, whether that's through a third space or creating a collaborative project. And there's collaboration between art scientists, which I found super interesting. Not just between the art and the science, but between people who are in completely different fields. And there's a way to make that possible. So the community aspect and how the general public enters into art science is super important and isn't something that I really could put words to before.
How was your experience having these much longer conversations with all these people? Was there anything you were surprised by in anybody that, like, didn't come up in the prelude?
I mean, it was interesting that every prelude was different from the conversation that actually happened in the end. Because we do the prelude so that we can get a sense of how the person thinks and what art side means to them and if they're in alignment with the mission that we're on. But then in the actual conversations, it exploded times like 10 how understanding or how ingrained in art science these people really are. Like the hour long or 2 hour long sometimes conversations that came out of the actual reporting. Yeah, it was like I was experiencing art science with them as they were discussing and talking about it. Like I just love being able to listen to people's personal stories and with the passion that they share about going from one thing to the next. There's so much content in there that I felt like I could relate to, even with my very little limited experience of what art science is. There were little parts of this that I can see, oh yeah, like if I walk into a museum, that's probably how I would see something as well. Or oh yeah, if I were to speak to this artist, then maybe I would connect to them on that point as well. So the way that they were able to relate to other people in their process, in their journey, transform in their journey, transform by meeting other people was incredible. Something else that I think was really inspiring to hear about is how many references they had to people who had words or ideas or philosophies that they could connect their own practice back to. Like also French, kudos to French. Like there's so many words in French that came up, like recherche and trouble, and there was like another one as well that you're able to connect their way that they see the language and the etymology of different words to actually inform their practice. I think something now that I would love to focus on in my PhD is getting those references out. Like who else out there back there has been doing art science or has a philosophy that connects to how it can be understood? Not so I can just name drop, but so I can actually see where field is coming from and how people can be inspired beyond your own personal work. Like everyone is so connected to their literature, to their spaces, people who've been doing things before them. And I think that's super important for laying a foundation that other people can connect to and understand, but also for yourself as a creator, as a practitioner, to know that everything that you create is not necessarily original. Yeah, we talked about play in our first episode, and I wasn't expecting it to come up as much as it did. The fact that it came up in almost every single episode, I think 5 out of 6 episodes, someone mentioned play around there, and I think it really gets us back to the root of how art science can be approached. Like, there's a freedom in it. There is a almost a loosey, unstructured way to approach it. so that you can find yourself in the in between in a way that you weren't expecting before. In further building art science, I'd love to see the role of play and how that can impact change workshops or become a theme that people can tap into so that they have an entry point into art science. But another thing that I think transformed over the discussion of art science was the world of design. That I didn't know that design had structure in the way that it does. There's so much in design. Did you see that as well? I didn't know anything about design.
I think the 2 of us kind of come from a similar or we have a similar science, so I think design to us is very distant, and I think also in neuroscience, we're very focused on the inner world, whereas I think design is very community, kind of like object creation based, and I think that's something that was totally new to me. That actually maybe might have been one of the topics where I was like, "Oh, like, I would love to explore more of that in my own art science."
At one point in Ross's discussion, and then when we got to Michelle as well, who's also in design, I was like, is design a science? Or maybe design is a science. And I'm sure there's a science to it just because of the way that there is so much structure in how design can be done. I didn't understand the way that design spoke to problems and solutions. Like there really is a start point and goal. I was just thinking of design as making something pretty in the past, but it really, there is more to that. And I think the way that that was described also informs the philosophy of art science and how to shape a problem, shape a solution, whether a solution is necessary in art science. Like it adds a lot to the conversation in a way that I didn't think before. Like in the past, it was just an element, an item to choose on your cream app directory profile. Yeah, I'm in design. But what does that actually mean? What does design mean? I wouldn't be surprised if every field had something like that to contribute. Like we just got into design because of these conversations that we had. But what if every single practice had a more nuanced way of expressing itself?
I think it's actually interesting because both Michelle and Rasa were mentioning that design has a lot of problems and that today's design does need a different kind of perspective and approach. And I feel like the design maybe you and I both fell in love with is one that is more art science in its nature, which I think is super cool. Like they were both describing needing to leave and needing to kind of take a breath from this very rigid, very structured thing that didn't make sense in what it was creating. So I think that's yeah, that was super interesting to hear both of them kind of agree that design maybe needed a new.
A fresh take. Hmm. I wonder then if, as art science develops and creates hopefully some kind of literature base or philosophy, that it can also inform the way that single disciplines operate because, single disciplines are valid in themselves. But is there a way that each discipline can evolve so that it's a little bit more congruent with the way that the world wants to work in an integrated way, intersected way with people who are across countries and in different parts of the world sharing knowledge? How can each discipline itself evolve based on like an underlying integrative openness?
They're just thinking the word open, like this everybody seemed to like we were saying earlier about how like yes, you do need to specialize, but at the end of the day, all these art scientists were really opening both their science and their art to different disciplines, different ideas, perspectives, and like this idea of openness, I think kept coming up also for me.
Quick question. Have you ever felt like the only person in the room who cares about the logic and the creativity, the experiment and the exhibition, the data set and the performance? Well, you're not alone, you just haven't found your people yet. The CREMAP Directory of Innovators and Art Scientists is the CreArt Foundation's global directory of multidisciplinary minds, a searchable, growing community of practitioners who live exactly at that intersection. Create your free profile, get discovered, and find collaborators who actually speak your interdisciplinary language. To learn more, head to creart.ca/cremap, that's creart.ca/CREMAP, and join the network. What are some practical mechanisms you think can guide the development of art science in society?
I really loved we were mentioning Philip's kind of démarche. I don't know what that is in English, like, there's a that's such a perfect word. He had a very clear vision that he wanted to do something more artistic and exploratory, but he seemed to say that from the beginning, he was like, "I need to approach it from a very technical like, I need to have the science in order to better understand what it is I can kinda play with," like, if we're using all the words. And so I think that's something that I learned and that can be practically used to approach a more art science lifestyle or kind of enter that world. This idea that you do need to specialize, but to always keep your mind open to the fact that every tool, everything that we're learning and specializing in can be the seed for something greater. What's an example this season of someone treating a limitation as a possibility instead of a wall? I feel like everyone is doing that all the time.
Oh, yeah. I think even just to tie it into how to make things practical with limitations, I think limitations are welcomed from every person who spoke. There was friction and they almost took the challenge and made it something more. Whether it's through turning the way you pursue art science into an entrepreneurship style of creation and of reaching people, or whether it's making it something that's more curation based. You have to approach a problem through bringing other people together, but as the art scientist, you're the person at the center. Like there's so many different limitations that came up with each person's process and how they were navigating the art science world, and they use that to then change their career so that it became something else. And so there are these barriers that in these questions that everyone had, and they're able to take those problems and turn them into something else. So limitations are part of the process. Limitations shape what your art science journey can become later on.
I think from my end, I was working with all the transcripts, so I wasn't participating in the interview itself, but I was reading through every transcript and pulling out different sections to then put into reels on Instagram. I feel like that's a really interesting process because I ended up showing my mom all of these things, and I went through the Instagram with her of Creart, and it was awesome to have her so invested and really interested in the topic. But all the reels, she was like, "What? Like, tell me more about these people. It's so awesome." And I was like, "Yeah, well, now we have a full podcast for you to listen to." This interview series has been an incredible way to, like, actually learn more about the art scientists who have actually done this as their careers, like, to hear their full journey, the positive moments, the difficulties, the collaborations. I think it's been so cool to be a part of this and to hear and read everything.
There was a slide that you created about what to take away from each person. You wrote, art science does not simply communicate knowledge, it creates the conditions for reorientation, changing how we think, feel, perceive, relate, and ultimately live with what we know. And I think that's such a great statement. It's spot on and it's broad, but it's so fascinating how even in that statement, each of those words actually like contributes. So there's so much in those words, thinking, feeling, being, that actually can be elaborated on with every single episode. And so it's really a great circle to come back around to, like from our own personal journeys on how we started and perceived what this season would be like, but then to come back now and be like, "Oh my goodness, yes, we were correct in certain ways, but there's so much more underneath the general statements and ideas that we had in the beginning." Like there's actually stories and points that describe what those general ideas were and how they came about.
Something I was wondering, since you've been kind of managing also all the structure behind everything, have you heard back from the community, people who have listened already, or what has been the feedback so far?
Yeah, I'm really impressed, honestly, that first of all, like you said, that people would even click on the link to listen. It's one thing to have an idea in your mind, another thing to do a test run with the team, but a completely different thing to actually have people listen and share what they're getting from it. I have one friend in particular who's been almost on it every single week and they're sharing their responses and their like what they're feeling. And I think it really connects because of where that person is in their life and making a decision in following art and science. And then there's also emails of people who are like, oh, I'm a friend of this person or a connection from here. And I didn't know this was a real thing. I can't believe I found this blog. Here's a link. And I think that's something I also really love about the community is that everyone is trying to expand. Like from this podcast, I'm able to get messages from people all over the place who also want to help it expand. Like, you know, it's they're also contributing and sharing links and adding ideas. And I'm very excited about what has come from the last couple weeks. I think we've grown a lot. I'm not just in the number of people we've been able to attract, but also in our own philosophy and our own mission and how to do the things that we say we want to do in a real way.
We had an amazing team for sure. It takes a village.
It really takes a village. Like this was supposed to be a 2-month project back in March. It took some time, but we're here.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who listened and who followed, whether you listened to just one podcast or followed the entire series, whether you clicked a link on Instagram on a story, or whether you found us through the reels or an email or the blog or whatever. Just thank you for taking the time to kind of enter this world, and we really hope that you all got something out of it, that you were inspired. And I think do talk to people around you, like, not to promote our stuff at all, like, just art science is totally community based. If you were inspired by something, yeah, tell someone else and maybe you'll spark kind of a desire for someone to enter this world. That's certainly been the case for me, and I think I hope that everyone was inspired, and I hope that you guys can spread that around as we have. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and we hope to see you guys all for season 3 or in all of the other activities that Create is doing.
I am in complete agreement with Brune. Thank you for taking the time to follow us on this journey of Artside Current Season 2. Whether you caught 1 episode or 6, whether you found us through a friend, a reel, or a random link someone sent you, thank you genuinely. This series only means anything because you showed up for it. I'd love to look at this season as a part of an age of reorientation. If art science is calling you, take some time to learn that skill that's been on your mind. Apply for that discovery program, send the email. I'm encouraging you to take the leap of faith that the art science in you has a place in this world. We need you to make it happen because you can. If our discussion sparks something in you, remember to pass it on. And if you or someone you know wants to help the Queer Art Foundation's media teams to keep making works like this, as a partner, a supporter, or just someone who believes in what we are building, we'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for Season 3 for a whole new set of conversations. I'm your host and founder, Nicia John, and I can't wait to see you there.